Okay, and we're live. Hello, everybody, and welcome to a new episode of AI Readiness for Salesforce. Today, I'm joined by Sam Radion, an expert that will bring his perspective, and hopefully, we'll have a very good conversation, right? Sam, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, thanks, Luca. Thanks for having me on the podcast. It's really great to see you in person. We have caught up a few times in person at various expos over the time, and Luca and I have known each other for quite a few years. I'm head of sales at Finity. So Finity is a recfintech company. So we operate in the recruitment sphere. We provide payroll systems for umbrella companies and recruitment agencies. We've been around for about 10 years in various shapes and forms, but it was only in the last 12, 16 months that we've actually launched as Finity. And the plan is that we provide a financial unity. So the name Finity is sort of financial unity, and it's bringing everything together. So it's all about automation, trying to make sure that recruitment agencies and umbrella companies have one single source of truth and a centralized system that makes things easier for them. And as part of that, you bring in various advanced tools, things like APIs, and of course, AI is coming to the fore. We've launched quite a few AI tools in the last year, and I've had a lot of experience in AI over my years. Previously, I was at Merit Software for 16 years, and before leaving there, we were looking certainly at some AI tools in the company. So AI has been on the radar for quite a long time, but it's only really in recent years, isn't it, that the AI has become a buzzword, and it's kind of everybody is talking AI, but it's actually been around for quite some time in terms of machine learning and automation, and all of those things now are getting lumped under the AI. So organizations are thinking, we've got to get ready for this because there's so many tools under that banner.
And that's exactly where probably we want to start, right? So you just said organizations are gearing up, and this podcast is about AI readiness, right? So you've been very vocal recently in your posts. That's how we follow each other predominantly, I guess, is through LinkedIn, about how companies are not moving enough at the pace that is quick enough to adopt to the new reality, the new technologies out there. Can you elaborate a bit on that? Why do you think that is, and what can we as technology companies and technology innovators do to help speed the pace of adoption?
Yeah, it's a constant battle, really. I mean, the market that we operate in, which is recruitment and payroll, is one that's very traditionally stuck in the past, really. I mean, I know there's a lot of companies out there that would be quite angry to hear that, because there are quite a few trailblazers out there. But I also talk to a lot of companies that are still dealing with paper, timesheets, that sort of thing. So it's kind of, and I can understand it, because the nature of things like temporary recruitment, when you send out 100 waiters out to do a huge event, it isn't always effective to have them all using smart devices or clocking in and out things. Sometimes you do want a piece of paper, just say, sign your name as you came in, sign your name as you go out. So organizations like that are still having to deal with very old ways of working, because they are still the most efficient, but the technology then still needs to work with that. So those organizations, you're looking at things like machine learning for those bits of paper. You can put OCR in against them, that sort of thing. When you're dealing with that large amount of data, AI's ability to summarize data is really, really useful. So although those organizations are still having to deal with what are effectively the old ways of working, it's about looking at the old ways and finding out how we can speed those sort of things up.
So it's interesting. So your perspective is we as innovators, technology providers, we need to come closer to where companies are operating and how companies are operating today with our technology to enable their adoption. So it's not them not being ready. In a way, is the technology that is way beyond or way different from what they would be familiar and adopting today.
Yeah, I think whenever I talk to recruitment agencies and umbrella companies, they really, really want to improve things. They want to automate stuff. I think we did a survey recently, and it said that something like 74% of the payroll professionals are losing 11 hours a week to inefficient tech or processes. And that was a third-party survey that we did, and some of the results from it were just staggering like that. There's a huge amount of inefficiency in there, and it's very, very hard for them to get around that and improve things. But they really, really want to. The appetite is definitely there to bring the new technology in. It's just that the technology has got to work, and it's got to be genuinely useful for them and not just a gimmick.
So, the payroll example for temporary staff is a great example of, maybe it's actually, we've always done it on a piece of paper, so easy and quick, just sign in, sign out, all done. Now, you just mentioned, you apply technology on that, or you bring the technology closer to that, and you'll have a more efficient way. You will be able to save time because all that data would be digitalized and therefore transferable to a different database where it can be elaborated for, issuing paychecks, understanding, who has completed the full shift and who's left early, who's arrived late. All of that information is in there. And I think that's the efficiency level. When you aggregate multiple instances like this, that's where you have a new set of data that you wouldn't have the ability to analyze unless you hire a bunch of analysts. But AI is reshaping that. Yeah. AI is bringing a new perspective, especially when data is aggregated. So it kind of becomes an imperative on the one hand because it becomes strategic, but there's still a lot of focus on the efficiency gain, right? So I think that's where I think the AI can do its best job.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I've seen recently that, most companies at the moment that have invested in AI haven't seen a return on investment on it yet. And I think that's really due to what you were just saying there about the scale of the data. AI has got things that it's really, really good at doing and things that it's really, really bad at doing. And one of the things it's really good at doing is analyzing and summarizing huge amounts of data. And certainly in the sphere that we work in, which is the temporary recruitment marketplace, it is big data. I mean, our system alone, I think last week we processed like 150,000 pay slips. There's, millions and millions of workers. Everybody's got to get paid, haven't they? Everybody's got to get paid on time. But it's also important that when you pay people, Payroll analyzes that data properly for various different things. There's huge risks with things like fraud in the payroll space, where, you have human trafficking, you have, modern slavery, that sort of thing. And AI is really good at spotting those sorts of patterns within that big data, particularly when you're dealing with huge amounts of payments. It's really, really good at doing that sort of thing.
Yeah, and I could imagine that's probably where AI becomes strategic, right? So it adds another layer. I can think of similar examples where, cross-referencing different databases, looking for similar patterns can actually lead to either better ways of doing it, of doing things, or on the first hand, actually a better understanding of the job at hand and how to best execute it.
And I think you've hit the nail on the head there with really the better understanding, because it's about presenting that information to a human often at the end of the day, because AI is really good at spotting patterns. It's less good at giving the context to those patterns. So it can understand that there is a pattern here and it can show it to the human being, and human beings then are better at picking up what does that pattern actually mean rather than the AI. I mean, to give you an example, one of the research projects I did quite some time ago was around an expense product, an expense capture product. There's dozens about, they're like Expensify, those sorts of things, where you put your expenses in. It goes usually to an expense approver to be approved. And then, your expense gets approved and paid to you. I was researching putting into an AI into that process. This was quite some years ago, very early on in the business of AI. And what it did is it flagged up the ones that were most likely to be fraudulent or rejected. And it based that on the summarization of the data, because you had so much data to work with. It based on the summarization of data, the previous expenses that had been rejected across the board. But what it was doing is when I looked at the actual patterns, it was saying, this expense is likely to be fraudulent or rejected. And when you looked at it, it was usually because the person was foreign. That seemed to be the pattern. And it's because obviously people from another country, you operating in a second language, are more likely to make a mistake or do something wrong. So in those early days, it was definitely the case that the AI would flag up a warning, but it wasn't necessarily a warning, it was AI bias. And that's definitely something that is still present in a lot of AI systems, and we have to be very careful of. But that's where the human beings come in. So the AI can present you this data really nicely, but I think a human is still needed often to give it that proper context and understand what's happening with the AI patterns.
Absolutely. And do you think that maybe is part of where companies are a bit reluctant to adopt AI. They see it as a cost. It could actually go wrong without supervision. So it brings in another thing to do rather than solving my problem in the first place.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think we will probably see that quite a lot in 2026 because the AI tools now are getting really good. And even, people like myself are using them. ChatGPT, you can talk to it quite nicely. It chats back to you way better than Siri ever could. But the quality that it's coming back now is quite poor. So, I mean, to give you another example, last night, I was trying to remember a Christmas movie. So it was a Christmas movie. And I said, I think it was a Christmas movie about a genie. And it had that woman from Bridesmaids in it. And the AI really could not get it. It was making up movie names. It was giving me total garbage. And 2 seconds of Googling, and I discovered that the movie was called Genie with Melissa McCarthy. Yeah, and it was seconds for me to find it out on Google, but the AI, because I think the data in ChatGPT may have been a bit out of date, and it was a relatively recent movie. It was just creating movie titles. But what that example shows is that gives my trust a knock then on AI straight away. And I think we're going to see a lot of that next year where the AI is giving bad information and people then lose trust in it. And that's going to feed through to businesses thinking about, my experience with AI has been bad. And when it's been soured with poor experiences, it's very hard for them to trust it. So from software suppliers, we're going to have to, show that trust is there and that the data is actually good.
And on the other hand, I think it's also forcing, I think companies are feeling, though, the inevitability of AI creeping into their workplace, right? So either because of initiatives of the individuals, right? So they're embracing AI in their own right, and they're, kind of dropping things in maybe not, genie in movies titles, but they would actually, drop entire documents, ask for summarization, run a quick email just to polish it, maybe just even, from your Gmail or your Outlook.
But that's what I mean. I think, in the next year, we're going to start seeing people starting to understand a bit more about what AI is good and what AI is not so good at. So like you said, there, it's excellent for doing summarizations. It's excellent for brainstorming. It's excellent for saying, rewrite this.
And I've seen companies actually investing in training their organization to understand how to manage AI, which is a very interesting concept, but again, one that reluctantly maybe companies have to embrace in 2026 because AI has entered their workplace, that has entered their operations that we run on a daily basis. So we might as well embrace it and do it right. And doing it right, like you were saying, requires supervision, requires the ability to interface with it and understand the limitations of it, and then deal with the output in a cautious way, I guess.
Yeah, and we're definitely going to see an understanding of the limitations and the benefits, I think, that people will start to get just in general, because we're definitely at the stage now. It's very much the golden age of AI at the moment, where everything it's like Uber. If you remember when Uber first launched, it was absolutely amazing, wasn't it? You could get a really expensive Uber Plus car for next to nothing. It would be there within seconds. And of course, over time.
Yeah.
And as these companies tried to grab market share, and we're definitely in that sphere at the moment with a lot of the AI tools where people are trying to grab market share. So it's very, very cheap, and they're trying to make it as ubiquitous as possible.
Yes. So coming back to your experience as a professional and kind of bringing it to the market, bringing solutions that are innovative, that have bits of AI that surfaces throughout the delivery of the value to the customers. How are people interfacing with it? How are the companies that you connect with? Are they expecting it? Are they already fed up? Are they like, oh, another AI? Don't say agent, please.
Yeah.
Don't say agent.
I think as a salesperson, people are expecting to hear the word AI. I think it's one of the buzzwords, isn't it? You kind of have to say it, but then I'm trying to sort of, as a more trust seller, you have to kind of caveat it and explain what you mean then by it, because people will sort of see companies as a bit behind if they don't mention it. But I do think that it's more trustworthy and honest to say exactly how you are using it. So like you said, with yourselves, with Vinton and so on, where it's lots of agentic AI and absolutely amazing for summaries, you also will then explain exactly how it's working, what it's doing, how it benefits, that sort of thing. And that's what we definitely need to be doing as salespeople, is explaining what we mean by AI. So, I mean, to give another example, we've put AI into the knowledge base. So when you click on help, you can ask an AI agent. The AI agent then is extremely limited in as much as it only knows the knowledge base data. And if you ask it anything beyond that, it will quite obviously say to you, that's outside my remit. But customers find it really useful to be able to ask natural language questions of AIs now. I do wonder if, in a few years' time, we will start to see less keyboards about. But it's definitely the case that people are now starting to just interact in more natural language with AI. So it makes sense, doesn't it? Because, if you want to ask a knowledge base, I want to know how to do this. It's kind of pointless phoning up a support technician and saying, oh, how do I remove VAT from an invoice? If you type that into an AI and it just says, go here, go here, go here, it's fine. And of course, the AI doesn't judge you. So you can ask really questions.
True. And I think, to that point, I think that's also something that we are learning all over again, because I believe up until a couple of years ago, we would have searched for the specific term that would then point us at the right part of the knowledge where, that VAT correction is actually explained and how to go about it, right? So you would actually have to make an extra effort to find the right term used in the right context so that you find the right information. And now this is flipping because maybe that's one of the immediate benefits of AI, coming closer to us and trying to making an effort to understand what we're saying, even to the extent that now my interaction with AI typically require a couple of steps before the answer is given, because the AI will then interrogate me on what I'm asking. Do you mean this, or do you want me to go down this route to answer your question? And then I figure, well, you're right. I didn't give you enough context to actually give me a right answer. Talking about context, I think it's very important what you said about the implementation of the AI as part of your solution, because those boundaries that you put around it are probably those that are reassuring. They're exactly what's reassuring the companies that are embracing AI, that
exactly,
controlled in its knowledge, right?
I mean, if the customers could see behind the scenes just the effort that goes into making sure these things are good quality and well tested and don't go beyond their guardrails. I can remember getting drafted in to help red test it, to sort of, try and break it. And it took, it takes quite a long time to get those products to market then, and when you do it properly.
That's absolutely right. And I think that's probably also part of the trust that over time, we as technology providers and users and purveyors of AI are bringing to the market with our solution. Because again, going back to our first experiences with AI, you could ask anything and everything and you would get an answer. And sometimes you shouldn't ask certain questions and you should definitely not get an answer to those questions. Questions about race, or a question about weapons repairability, and where do I find, how do I build, and all of that, which is out of boundaries by definition, especially so in a corporate environment where you definitely don't want to give that option to people.
Yeah. Summarization and natural language interfaces are just kind of the bread and butter of AI at the moment now, aren't they?
Yes, that's where the most value is delivered at the moment. There are very interesting directions that the AI is taking. Given the boundaries and given solid boundaries, it can start to interact with people, like clients. Like in your example, we have some we've seen some more sophisticated use with voice as well, which actually synthesizes the text into voice. But it's fair enough, because again, as you were saying, people want that natural language interaction, and there's nothing easier than talking to an AI and being responded with voice. And I think that feels very obvious and natural. There's a lot of effort that goes into building such solutions.
Yeah, I do love working out where technology is going to go, and it's like that is one of the questions I do think. Will it ever happen? Do you think that we now no longer need a keyboard and we just interface two computers through voice?
Well, I think I have an example of that in my household with my teenage boys and my little girl. They talk more into their device than they actually type. And that's an interesting approach. I don't think it's to the extent that you are going with that, complete disappearance of the keyboard. But I can see that happening in the real world.
But yeah, give it 5 to 10 years, and people like that are starting to enter the world of the workplace. They're going to expect that sort of interaction with systems. And 5 to 10 years in software terms isn't actually that long. You're thinking that far ahead when you're planning your roadmaps and things like that. So that sort of stuff needs to be starting to be built now.
Absolutely. And that actually leaves us to the other thought of, so today, our job as knowledge workers is evolving in terms of being capable of interacting with AI and extracting the most value out of these new technologies. Tomorrow, as the technology gets better, our role will need to elevate even more, right? So we will need to add value at a different level, enter the workplace with a different set of value and deliver value in a different way, because AI will have taken care of a lot of the foundational work that we do every day, right?
Yeah.
How do you see that evolving? What's your big picture thinking relating to AI and the role of humans as AI continues to evolve?
There's always going to be a place for humans, but I do think that we are definitely going to see a lot of people out of work because of AI in the years to come, and jobs changing. Because even traditional jobs that have required humans to do stuff, you're just seeing the pace of change is just phenomenal, isn't it? I mean, I was looking at Photoshop and Premiere and video editing, because obviously I do quite a lot of video work, and it's not far off now that you won't have those tools. There's not many tools left now that are on premise. There's not many software products that are left on premise from a technology point of view. The ones that tend to be around are the ones that deal with quite big chunks of data, things like Photoshop, things like Premiere, but they now are just starting to ease away. You look at the AI video tools, and it's kind of, you upload a frame, you upload a bit of video. The internet now is fast enough to do that sort of thing, and people are doing it. Photoshop now is almost gone. You look at Google's Nano Banana, you kind of don't need it anymore. You just upload your photo and say, in natural language, sharpen the background, add a bit of blur effect in the background, and it does it for you. You're not really needing those on-prem tools. So it's definitely going to be the case that those are starting to winnow out now. But humans are still going to be needed, because you still need somebody to ask the right question, and you still need somebody to decide if the AI, what the AI has produced is okay.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's where we will need to play our cards as humans and bring our value into the workplace.
I mean, in terms of the workplace that I work in, yes, as much as payroll and recruitment agencies, AI, it's very hard to replace people in payroll. I think a lot of the payrollers out there would be agreeing with me, in as much as payroll is way more complicated than a lot of people think. They always say it's, people that solve problems you never knew you had in a way you can't understand is payroll. And a lot of people think that payroll is just pressing a button. And the actual processing of payroll is just pressing a button. When you've got, everything's all lined up and it works. I mean, the Finity system processes 10,000 payments in 5 seconds. So we've got some companies out there that just think that's amazing because payroll is done in seconds. But where the actual human comes in is when someone then asks about, why has it worked out like this? Why is my pay like this? Because you're dealing with humans with payroll. It's people getting paid, and they want to know they've been paid correctly. They want to know that they've been paid on time. I think at the moment, it's something like 43% of companies struggle to pay their workers on time. So payroll is a massive thing for that. And you still need human beings to deal with those human beings
And I think there's room for improvement, that the AI will fill some of the gaps, and then the workers and the complexity that they can deal with, and I guess the empathy that they bring to work will make the difference, because especially those hairy questions about, why have I been, paid this much? Why is my tax code changed? And, what's happening with that particular contribution that is going out of my on my payroll? Those are hairy questions, and they need to be handled with care. And that care can only come from a human. If it's a human asking the question, then there should be a very, very human and empathic answer.
Yeah, and particularly in the realms of legality as well. So when you're dealing with things like payroll and lots of other sectors similar to that, you're dealing with, contractual bonds. So if you ask an AI, why is my pay this way? And the AI gives you an incorrect answer, you're into the realms then of almost a legal representative of the company telling you, your pay's been wrong. So you've now can request that additional pay, and companies then will be concerned about that. We'll certainly see some test cases of that sort of thing, I think, where AIs give bad advice and then it goes to court, and it's said, well, that's a representative of your company. You have to stand by what the AI said. Yeah. And particularly in, highly regulated industries, things like payroll, where you're dealing with money and people's livelihoods and contractual arrangements, it's difficult to give an answer sometimes from an AI beyond the surface.
Yeah, and I think the ability to understand the situation and dig deeper into the situation without rushing into an answer is a trait that a human can bring into the conversation. And we haven't seen AI yet, kind of stepping up to that. Not excluding that we're not going to see it in the future, but I agree with you that there are a lot of conversations where the value that you're expecting as conversing will not be, and you will not even, to the extent that you will not accept it from an AI.
I mean, when you use a lot of AIs now, and they all have that little caveat at the bottom, this AI may be wrong. And it's that's not acceptable in quite a lot of industries. If you imagine, if you got your pay slip and it said your pay calculation may be wrong,
that wouldn't be reassuring at all.
It wouldn't be.
Interestingly, it doesn't actually. We know, and we're humans, and we make mistakes. But I think it's a completely different field, right? And it's a completely different set of again, values and potential when you're conversing with a human being, and that conversation. What else can or are people doing to get ready for AI? Do you think people are expecting, people in general, right? So I'm thinking people as in people that work, right? So in their work environment with their work hat on, and they're thinking about their career, they're thinking about the future of where they are evolving, and how they're making a contribution to the world. How are they getting ready for AI, and are they ready? Will they be ready? What do you see from your perspective?
I think my opinion is that people are more ready than we think. So I think people in general, when you're sort of talking about society in general, a lot of them are more ready for AI than organizations are. So they're already using those tools in the background. They're already talking to chatbots in the background, doing more of their work in less time, using AIs in the background. And I don't think the organizations quite have caught up with that, because the AI, I think they've got a more cautious approach to AI than the general public. Whether that's right or wrong is a whole different question, because I think, we as technologists and people who have worked with AI know about its benefits and its limitations. And when you've got that sort of deeper understanding of it, then you know what you can use AI and what you can't use AI for. And organizations often have people that have been in technology for a long time. So that's why they are perhaps a bit slower to implement it, because there's a slightly more cautious approach. But I think people in general just see a useful tool and leap straight on it. It saves me time. why would I not use it? If it saves me time though and doesn't do it so accurately, that's going to be where the problems lie.
Yeah. And I think, as we said earlier, 2026 will be the year where more and more companies realize that AI is happening, that there are people across the organization that are embracing it, that already embraced it, maybe they're ahead of the curve where the company is actually lagging a bit behind. So they will put in place the guardrails, they will put in place the technology and the training so that they can fully make the most of it, but they can fully embrace it, make the most of it, and grow with the possibilities that come with this new technology.
Yeah, absolutely. And things like Vinton are just going to be at the forefront of that, aren't they? Because you've had a good run up to it now, and you've got a nice mature product.
Yeah, no. What we are seeing from our perspective is exactly that, right? So there's the immediate return, which is centered around efficiency, right? So people are getting used to that immediacy of, I have a conversation, I want a summary, I want to follow up, I want the data to be stored where I need them, and then companies strategically are starting to see the value of the compounding value of having all conversations unified in context and in the same database that is readable by the AI of the next generation, be that Agentforce, be that an AI that is out there and that will be capable of reading much larger amounts of data and bringing them all together under the umbrella.
Yeah.
Well, this was very, very interesting.
Good.
As a conversation.
I was a bit worried because sometimes these things can go off on tangent a little bit and end up a little bit dull.
100%. This was super cool. Thank you very much again, Sam.
Thanks, Luca. Thanks for having me. It's been great to speak to you again.
Very cool. Yes. Thank you. Thank you.